safe streets, vibrant neighborhoods, successful business and commerce. These are things that make a healthy community. We are a diverse community, rural, suburban, urban, a multitude of languages and ethnicities, ages and experiences. We are a collaborative community. Public-private partnerships make us a model community that others want to follow. It is what makes us unique. It is what makes us strong. The employees of Kent County reflect our diversity and seek to serve our communities.
People in this county, in this area, we wrap our arms around each other. We come together to collaborate, to solve problems. We're all working for the good of the whole. And I think that's wonderful. And you can see it. You can see it as you drive around Kent County.
Our impact starts the day a baby is born and a birth certificate is issued, to protecting children from deadly diseases through vaccination, to the public safety and justice provided by law enforcement and the courts, to offering veterans services and caring for the elderly. Every day we work to keep our communities robust.
I think if you are somebody who's interested in serving your community, in building a strong knowledge base and a good group of people to work with, then the county is one of your best employment opportunities out there. It's been completely rewarding in every way I could possibly explain for 26 years, and I feel like I grow every single day still today.
Leading these dedicated employees, our 19-member Board of Commissioners and our County Administrator Controller, along with our elected officials and appointed department directors, placing emphasis on civic involvement, quality housing, vibrant neighborhoods, and strong, solid infrastructure to allow businesses to thrive. Professional, dedicated, collaborative, and innovative.
Behind the scenes, collaboration between foundations, charitable organizations, nonprofits, for-profit businesses, public sector demonstrated through the county, the city of Grand Rapids, the townships, all the cities and the villages in our area. If we don't come together, then we will not have the strength that we have today, and I only hope to build upon that.
Our aim is to make our communities the best they can be. We are involved in exciting development projects, sustainable recycling programs, and creative progressive prevention programming. We partner with elected officials, impacting policy ideas that become great achievements. We seek opportunities to reach out into the community and offer our services to help our residents make Kent County thrive.
Our relationship is solid, both from a staff standpoint at the county level as well as the Board of Commissioners. And they understand what we do and the benefits that we can do for the community, and vice versa. We couldn't do what we do without the help of Kent County.
While most of us are busy running our lives, Kent County's elected officials, administrator controller, and over 1,600 employees are serving the communities where we live our lives, so we can all have a place we are proud to call home. Kent County, its life well run.
Is Jay going to be here to present it?
Good morning. Today is Tuesday, March 22nd, 2016. It's 8:30 a.m. This is a meeting of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee. Before we get started this morning, I'd like to have a moment of silence to recognize the victims of the attack in Brussels this morning. Thank you. Moving on, first item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any members of the public who would like to address the committee this morning? Please come right up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Gerald Miller, 7397 Buccaneer Drive Southeast, that's in Cascade Township. Good morning. I'm here representing the Kent Conservation District, and I want to specifically comment about your agenda item 6 on the adoption of the Agribusiness Community Work Group Report. First, just to share that the Kent Conservation District is a subunit of state government. We have 5 elected, public elected board members, and I'm one of those public elected board members on the Kent Conservation District. And if you look in your report on the second paragraph on page 21, you will see some comments about the role of Kent Conservation District in terms of this report. And I want to just expand on those comments. Our mission at the Kent Conservation District is to work with the citizens of Kent County to help them to protect and enhance the natural resources of the county. We focus primarily on programs for soil, water, and plant resources. And we do that with our partnership through USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service and the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Those comments are in that paragraph. And just let me expand on those comments briefly. First, it talks about the Michigan Agriculture Environmental Insurance Program, MEEP, that's the acronym, and it's funded through the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. We have a technician here in Kent County that provides the technical support for that program to farmers in the county. Farmers can become verified in 4 areas: in crops, in livestock, in farmstead assessment, and a new program just added, forestry and wildlife. And so what the technician does is work with the producer to implement the appropriate management practices in any one of those 4 areas or all 4 of those areas, and the producer then can become MEEP verified. She or he does not have to be verified in all 4. They can be verified, for example, in crops and livestock or in farmstead or whatever. But they can become MEEP verified. That's a verification for 5 years, and then they can be re-verified. The other comment in the report is about our partnership with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, and they in the FY14 Farm Bill, they did some reorganization for their programs, and they consolidated their easement programs, and they now have 2 programs for easement: agricultural land and easements and wetland reserve easements. And so there's an opportunity to access cost share through the district with our partnership with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Program for cost share monies from those easement programs. For an example, the Kent Agriculture Preservation Board has previously secured funds through those easement programs, and I understand they're looking at 2 tracts of land this year, 2016, to access additional cost share money for easements to preserve some agricultural land in the county. So that's the role of the Kent Conservation District, and I wanted to make sure you were aware of what we do, our partnership with the federal and state program to help protect the natural resources of the county, and specifically soil, water, and plant resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other public comment this morning? Good morning, Patty.
Good morning. Patty Burkholz, representing the Michigan League of Conservation Voters here in Grand Rapids and all over the state of Michigan. I was a member of the Agribusiness Work Group, as many of you know, and I want to thank you, the board, the former chair, for appointing the Agribusiness Work Group and giving us the breadth and width to do the work that we did. Everyone on the committee, I think, learned a lot more about agribusiness here in Kent County especially, but all over the state of Michigan. Several members raised actual surprise at some of the stats we learned. I know you've reviewed the report, so I'm not going to go into details, but we're very appreciative of it, and I hope that you and would encourage you to support it and pass it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other public comment? Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rick Chapla, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives with The Right Place. I'm speaking this morning specifically to item number 6, and I urge your adoption of the Agribusiness Work Group report, and furthermore to make a recommendation to the full board that they do the same. Your action signals to the agribusiness and food processing industry the importance, the economic importance of that sector to this economy, to this county's economy, as well as to the region. This is a sector that was pointed out in the report that is worth billions, employs thousands of people, and notably, again, is also a specific growth opportunity from an economic development standpoint, and is consistent as well with the goals and objectives and the strategic plan of the right place. Finally, your action as well as that of the county board, I think there's within the report there are specific recommendations, especially about communication, that I think are very important. So I don't think this is necessarily a report that just simply gets completed, gets filed, and put away up on a shelf. There's actions going forward, both by the county as well as by a number of partners, including the Right Place. We look forward to continuing to work with the county on its dissemination, its review, and discussion and implications for the future by other local units of government as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment this morning? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to item number 2 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from our March 8, 2016 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Mass, support.
Support.
By Commissioner Korndike. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes approved. Next up, legislative update, Public Affairs Associates. Becky Beckler is here this morning from Lansing. Good morning, Becky.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Well, this week is the last week before the legislature takes a 2-week spring break, so the timelines are a bit reduced this week as the legislature tries to get significant issues in place for final passage before the mid-June break for the summer. And the first priority is the budgets. The legislature is planning to move all of the budgets out of their subcommittee so that the appropriations can then move on those bills when they return from spring break. The only bills that we understand that won't move out of subcommittee this week are general government and the Health and Human Services budget. However, we do believe that the House and the Senate plan to keep the recommendation of the governor when it comes to our revenue sharing. So that's good news that they don't plan to make any changes or especially reductions to that line. But we will continue to monitor that. And right now, the focus of attention is on the Detroit Public School System. There is concern that the Detroit Public Schools will run out of money before the end of April if the legislature does not act. Last week, the House passed a supplemental of $48 million, trying to move enough money in place so that the school system could get through the end of the school year and pay the employees as well as their vendors. The Senate plans to move a more comprehensive package today. They have an agreement with the governor's office as well as Mayor Duggan on a more comprehensive, which is along the lines of where the governor has been proposing over the last year of the $700 million fix to Detroit Public Schools over the 10-year period. The Senate does plan to act on that. They have included a Detroit Education Commission. This is something that's been really the sticking point for the last several months. They're going to allow the mayor of Detroit to have full control over this commission. He will make the appointments. This commission will have control over opening and closing and placements of the public schools in the city of Detroit. So that is a significant change. But what it puts in place is that the Senate's going to move their version of Detroit Public Schools. The House has done, I will say, a kind of a stopgap measure. And then they're going to leave for 2 weeks, so there will not be a resolution until they return. Internally, the governor's office believes that they can find enough money to get them through these next few weeks, but it's something that the clock is still ticking, and the legislature does need to act quickly, but we have 2 very different proposals sitting in front of them as we see it today. But we do anticipate the Senate to act on that either today or tomorrow on Detroit Public Schools. Last night, the governor did propose, and maybe some of you did get his email communication, he's proposed a long-term as well as a short-term plan for the Flint water crisis. It does extend into further treatment for especially children under age of 6. He'd like to extend the breakfast program into the summer months, and I could get that full comprehensive plan to you if anybody wants that. Just see me after this meeting. I'll make sure you get a copy of that. There's also legislation that's going to be taken up in the House Tax Policy Committee. It was introduced by Representative Mike Weber from Rochester Hills, dealing with the state's Renaissance Act. It will remove the prohibition right now where companies could make payments in lieu of taxes. This would allow local unit governments more flexibility as they look at Renaissance Zone acts. It's our understanding also that the strategic fund, if this bill is actually passed and signed by the governor, has a resolution prepared that they will pass that ensures that local unit governments are at the table for any future Renaissance Zone activity. As soon as that resolution is available, I'll make sure that you get that. Again, it is up in House Tax Policy Committee. We believe that they're going to vote on that bill. However, it'll probably sit on the House floor through the end of this week, unless they decide to move that very quickly. But we still have more time when they return for the Senate, should the House tend to move on that. We're also watching the package of bills that's on the House floor dealing with moving 17-year-olds into the juvenile system. The House leadership has agreed that they won't move that until there's some type of funding mechanism that goes along with that. Our concern, though, that they probably won't give enough funds to actually implement those changes. So I'm working with the prosecuting attorneys, the probate judges, and the Michigan Association of Counties. Will be meeting, if not this week, next week, to talk about other solutions. We believe that the Senate probably isn't as excited about this package as the House is, so we've got some good opportunity to have some good dialogue and offer some alternatives to the Senate if they even are even any interest in taking up this package, but we'll continue to closely follow that as well. There's also the transparency piece, if you recall, that passed last session, and Representative Lyons has introduced a fix that doesn't quite fix it from the county perspective. The Senate doesn't like that version either, so it remains in the Senate committee. We're still working with members of the Senate to make sure that that bill does not move. I know that the Michigan Association of Counties is still waiting on some legal analysis, so we continue to monitor that very closely, hoping to keep that bill from further passage. The Senate also approved $1 million for first responders. If you will recall, in 2014, the budget created a first responders initiative, but it wasn't funded, and this is for firefighters. Right now, they aren't eligible for workers' compensation if because of their injuries due to their work, they they obtain cancer, and this is hopefully a stopgap measure. They put $1 million in that budget with the hope that at the end of the day, they'll put $3 million in to cover that cost for the budget. Those are really the issues that are in front of the legislature this week. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Becky. Questions for Becky this morning? Commissioner Korndike.
Thank you. So I read in MERS yesterday, Becky, that the state is having its credit rating downgraded due to the looming cost for the Flint water crisis and Detroit public schools. So with that being said, where are they going to find the dollars in the budget to deal with those issues? And do they have any idea how much money they're going to spend on those two items?
That's an excellent question. It's questions that the legislature is being asked and asking, because at this point, there doesn't seem to be what is the end result, what is the end game when it comes to the Flint water situation. Where will that end be? And there doesn't seem to be that even in the governor's long-term plan. It doesn't lay out a cost analysis of that, so that could continue to be a problem, but I don't think those questions have an answer. Those are great questions. I think with the Detroit Public Schools, that $700 million over 10 years is their solution. They are hoping that Stephen Rhodes, who is the gentleman who the governor has tapped to oversee that process, will be able to produce order and make sure that they don't get in that situation again. I know that the House version wants a financial review commission, similar to what happened when the city of Detroit went into bankruptcy. There's a financial review commission. They would like that commission to continue on and oversee the Detroit Public Schools. So there are a lot of conversations about how do we make sure this doesn't happen again, and that if we actually invest the $700 million, that's the end point, that now we've resolved that crisis and we won't see it again. So there's a lot of those conversations that are still going on.
Now, a follow-up, so the federal government, brought in the governor and all those types of things. Are they going to come up with any money to help Flint? Has that been proposed at all?
Well, I know our federal legislators are certainly lobbying their colleagues, because there seems to be a holdup in the committee process on the federal level. So they have indicated there's actually legislation to give Michigan more money for Flint, but I believe that in the recent newspaper articles that I've read, that there seems to be a negotiation issue on those funds. So to be determined.
All right.
Commissioner Mast.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know if I heard you right. So the fix to the House Bill 298, or the Senate Bill 298 that was passed. You said the fix, you're pushing it to be denied or to be
It's
not
not a
voted
total
for.
repeal. I think from the county perspective, we
Okay,
would like
that's-
that language totally
Just
repealed.
basically repeal the whole
And this
bill.
does not do that.
No,
and
that's right.
So we're still seeking a total repeal of that language.
Is that going to happen, you think, or is that likely to happen, or should we push to that?
We're still advocating for a total repeal. The Senate hasn't really indicated where their position is going to be on that issue. The only thing that we do know is that they aren't really supportive of Representative Lyons' version that she has passed through the House.
Okay, just another, in the advisory from your office, it talked about the Legislative Open Records Act, which is a bunch of bills. Is hopefully, is that going to move forward, you think? I mean, it seems like that would probably answer a lot of the questions that both parties have about transparency. I guess the question I have, is that going to move forward? It sounds like it's bipartisan, so it should.
It is
Does that affect county government?
Right now, it is the legislature. We go open meeting. FOIA is as it pertains to the legislature. And FOIA doesn't pertain to the legislature, so they had to actually create a new act that would allow this disclosure. It is a bipartisan package. I do believe that it will pass. It has the support of the Speaker of the House. He has indicated that he believes this is a good idea. So I think you will see some movement on that probably right after the spring break.
But so the county still will be under the FOIA requirements then?
Yes.
More than likely, which is what we are now. Okay.
Commissioner Angel?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Becky.
Good morning.
I know we're talking about the Detroit Public Schools, but the last time the city of Detroit received bailout money, one of the first things the city officials did with that money was give themselves raises. And that struck a lot of people as extremely odd and inappropriate. Is there anything in place to keep the same thing happening with the Detroit Public Schools, so they're not going to use this money to bump up their...
I think the anticipation is that Judge Rhodes will be the one that will be able to control that so those situations don't occur, as well as the new Financial Review Commission. I think they're trying to put as many overseers, if you will, in place so that that doesn't happen and that they don't have to come back there. There is a great concern within this legislature that this should only be a one-time fix and that we are turning Detroit Public Schools around, but they can only do what they can do.
It's the last of the one-time fixes. Thank you.
Any other questions for Becky this morning? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Becky, for being here this morning and giving us an update. Thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda from the Health Department. This is kicking off our season of hearing performance measurements from all the departments, and we have with us this morning Adam London, who will be giving us his 5-minute update from the Health Department. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning. I'll do my best to give you an overview of the Health Department in 5 minutes. I ask you for a little bit of mercy to begin with, because I think I'm going to bleed over in just a few moments. But you should have received a copy of the annual performance measures and the overview of the department. One thing you'll notice is on the front page there are 12 bullets with the Health Department's strategic goals. Those are actually from our strategic plan, and they correspond to the national 12 essential services that local health departments provide. You'll also notice that after each of those goals, in parentheses, is one of the board's vision goals. So you can see the symmetry between the board's vision and what the health department is seeking to accomplish. I'm going to quickly go over a couple of our significant accomplishments over the course of the year, and then talk a bit about the actual health metrics for the county. The first thing I want to mention is the academic health department. Last year we realized that we had a problem. Our last strategic plan was very ambitious, had a number of goals and projects and tasks that we simply didn't have the staff to accomplish. Just so happened that a number of our local universities also had a problem. The health sciences programs at Grand Valley and MSU and Ferris and Western have all grown significantly over the past few years. And all of those schools now have a public health program. With all of these additional students, they're also looking for practicum and internships for these students. So we partnered with those schools to create what we've called our academic health department, where we actually post the projects that we want done on Access Kent. Students can apply for them They're then brought into the department. We have, at the beginning of each semester, what we call Public Health Boot Camp, where they're really brought into the policy and the operations of the department. They're assigned a preceptor at the department, they're given their project, and they become part of our workforce. This gives them a very rigorous, real public health experience. It's a win for the universities, and it's a win for us as well. It's been very successful so far. I also want to mention that this year we were certified as a Project Public Health Ready health department. This is a result of the work that we have done in emergency planning and partnerships with local organizations to make sure that we have the highest standard for readiness when it comes to public health emergencies like epidemics. You may remember the year before, we were awarded national accreditation for our systems design and our quality improvement initiatives. Right now, we are the only health department in the state of Michigan that is both nationally accredited and Project Public Health Ready certified for emergency preparedness, which came in very useful for us at the early part of last year as Ebola became an international issue. And we actually had 48 travelers, Kent County residents from Western Africa, that we monitored, and we worked in close collaboration with our hospitals and our first responders to make sure that we had one community plan for how to assess the health of these travelers on a daily basis during the course of their incubation period, and to assure that our county wasn't exposed unnecessarily to the risk of Ebola. And I want to brag a little bit about the animal shelter. Last year they set a record with 1,116 adoptions. 5 years ago, the live release rate from the animal shelter, which is the percentage of animals that leave the animal shelter alive, was only 26%. Because of partnerships that we have established with other shelter organizations, the Humane Society, with great organizations like the Bissell Pet Foundation, we have gotten that live release rate up to 48%. So that's a pretty significant improvement, and that's one of the main reasons that the animal shelter last year was named the Michigan Animal Shelter of the Year by the Michigan Association of Animal Control. So we're very proud about that. There's a perception that the animal shelter deals exclusively with cats and dogs, and that just is not the case. Last year, in addition to cats and dogs, we received caimans, alligators, goats, pigs, parrots, chickens, pythons, fish, ferrets, and rabbits. So it's quite a diverse set of animals that we actually have to deal with, and a lot of that is in partnership with law enforcement responding to unique situations. We also, you may not know this, but in Michigan it is perfectly legal for someone to own venomous snakes. However, here in Kent County, we have a regulation which prohibits the possession of dangerous exotic animals. It's my job to determine what a dangerous exotic animal is. Last year we had a complaint, which was verified, of an individual who had 3 vipers, including a gaboon viper, which has the longest fangs of any poisonous snake and carries the largest dose of venom of any poisonous snake. We worked with collaboration with Corporate Counsel Tom Dempsey, worked to ensure that those snakes were moved out of Kent County and they were relocated to a different community that has no such regulation. And we did make sure that the authorities there knew that they were receiving some venomous reptiles. Now I want to, I had passed around our notifiable disease report for 2015. This is for the end of December, which represents the numbers for the entire year. Local physicians and hospitals are required to report to us any number of notifiable diseases which are reported on that form. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to point out a couple of interesting points therein. You'll see that AIDS, HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis are all higher than we would like, and many of them are on the uptick. We investigate all of those cases. One of the common themes we have found over the last year is hookup apps. Clusters of these illnesses surrounded and related to people who are using these apps on their phone to locate people with similar interest and engage in poor decisions. And so that's a problem that we're being faced with. Now, our hepatitis C numbers are up significantly as well. I don't think that's an actual increase in the number of people who are sick with hepatitis C, but rather the CDC has recommended that all baby boomers get tested for hep C. And that's what you're seeing there. Lyme disease is also up significantly, and that's probably related to the expansion of the range of the black-legged tick that spreads Lyme disease. And finally, a number of our foodborne illness infections are up, such as Campylobacter and Shigella. While I don't think that's an actual increase in illness, what we have done is we have communicated with our local physicians to encourage them, when they're seeing people sick with gastrointestinal illness, to take samples and to identify what the organism is. Historically, foodborne illness has been vastly underreported, and we're trying to get a handle on how much there actually is in the community. Now, while it looks like foodborne illness is up, I actually think our restaurants now are safer to eat at than they've ever been in the past. And the reason I say that is that 3 years ago, we started a food awards program, recognizing restaurants that perform extraordinarily well. We set a very high standard with, to qualify, they had to have a minimum number of violations over the course of the year. They had to train their entire staff on food safety and food handling practice. They had to have 0 verified complaints and a number of other criteria. Very high standard. In that first year, we only had 16% of our establishments meet that standard. Year 2, we did everything we could to celebrate the award, to encourage it. Lisa LaPlante did a fantastic job telling the media and telling the community about that award. The certificates were posted in the winning establishments. In that second year, our rate went up to 25%, and last year, 32%. So we're seeing a number of restaurants really doing what they can to hit that standard, to be excellent, and to win that recognition. Finally, I want to say just a couple words about lead. I've been asked a number of times over the past few months if lead is a public health crisis. And my answer to that is yes. Lead's been a public health crisis for over 100 years. In response to that, we have removed lead from paint. In 1978, we phased it out from gasoline in the mid-90s. All of our community water supplies are required to be tested very rigorously for lead, and all of them in Kent County perform very well and are well under the action levels for lead content. At the health department, we also test all of our toddlers in the WIC program for blood lead level. We test about 6,000 to 7,000 every year. Local pediatricians test another 3,000 to 4,000 every year. And that's been pretty consistent over the past 20 years. About 10,000 Kent County toddlers are tested for lead every year. In 2004, we had about 3,100 of those toddlers with an elevated blood lead level. That number has decreased gradually, where last year we had about 500. So significant progress is being made. There is still a real problem with blood lead, and we work with a number of partners to investigate when we do see a high blood lead level, to identify what that exposure has been, and to work with the family and with community partners to make sure that we're mitigating that risk and getting those children out of that risky environment and getting their blood lead level down to an acceptable level. So I think there's been a lot of success over the course of the past year. We know we have a lot to do. Our heart disease and cancer rates are way too high. New and emerging illnesses like Zika virus are a real threat for us. Re-emerging threats like tuberculosis are also a challenge for us. But we're working on those things, and we think that we have a very supportive community, and we appreciate the support of this board in helping us to meet those threats as well. So I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Well, thank you, Adam. I think that did go a little bit over 5 minutes, but given the breadth of all the different things that the health department oversees and is involved in, I was expecting it to go a little bit longer than 5 minutes. You have a lot going on. Any questions or comments for Adam this morning? Commissioner Bonk.
Yes, Adam, we got a question. In the fall of the year, one of the biggest activities is football, and at our high school football fields. And I noticed that at a couple fields that the bathroom facilities were less than adequate, especially in the visitors area, and sometimes food preparation was taking place very near the bathroom facilities. And I wonder if you ever send out a letter to the ADs and let them know that what's taking place and what should take place, or have some standards at the various football fields and facilities concerning high schools, because that's where the biggest concentration of folks would be.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We do send out a number of reminder materials over the course of the year, and we also hold a workshop for concession stands. It is a problem. It's something that we keep an eye on, and this year we did receive a few complaints about that and did communicate immediately with those schools to move those outhouse or restroom facilities from the food preparation area. There is a requirement for that, so it's one of those things that we're always working on.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Antor?
Thank you. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning.
I was actually pretty glad to see your restaurant certification. A lot of times I'll go into a restaurant, I'll see that up there. I think it gives you a little sense of, like, all right, I eat this place,
Right.
I'll get sick. But how often do you go back to those particular restaurants that have the certification to make sure they're not, lapsing back? Do they keep that certification up there for indefinitely, or?
It's a one-year award, and every year at licensing time, which is right about now, we look at the performance of all of those establishments over the course of the previous calendar year. And so in the very near future, probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks, you'll be seeing some of those press releases and some of that communication and new awards in those restaurants.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bolter?
Thank you. Hi, Adam. You guys are doing an awesome job. So I really appreciate all your work, and especially I had a personal experience with the animal shelter this year, so it was great. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
A couple quick questions on page 8. I just wanted to see what our process was regarding children with the high blood levels. Once we test those kids, and I do have a question regarding the testing. Is it true that the test in blood only shows up for the first 30 days? So if the child's exposed, we can only catch it, we have to catch it in that 30-day window, or is that not true?
I don't think that's true, but I will double check on that
Okay.
for you.
And then once we catch that and we find where that child is living due to lead exposure, do we then have some sort of reporting mechanism to get to the city or the landlord, or some way to communicate to get that problem fixed? Do we have some sort of mechanism to do that?
Yes, we have a consultant that we have on contract that does the investigation.
Okay.
We also have a nurse who does the case management to make sure that all the parties involved know what they need to know about the environment. If it's lead paint, it almost always is.
Yep.
What needs to be done in order to mitigate that.
Okay, and then my second question was regarding, same page, the children with the vision and hearing screenings. We're at 50% for follow-up with a medical provider. When we screen those children, I mean, how can we get up to 100%? Is it they don't have a pediatrician? Is it they don't have the health coverage? Where's the disconnect?
Yeah, so I think that the actual follow-up is much higher than that.
Okay.
What's happening is the physicians, the optometrists are not required to report back to us when follow-up has happened. So the only way that we know is if we're following up with those families and they're reporting back to us whether or not they saw a hearing or vision specialist to make correction. So we've actually committed more resource to that this last year. If you will see, in 2013 it was only 34%, 43% last
Right.
year, 45%. So we're trying harder to reach those families and make sure that they did follow through with our recommendation.
Okay, I just had concerns with, reading and
Yeah.
development. So.
It's very important. It's very
Thank you.
important, especially
Thank
for
you.
those for the academic performance in school.
Okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner Stack?
Thank you, Chair. I want to follow up again as well on this findings of lead-based poisoning. It seems to me that the incidents are really geographically concentrated. As we know that in some areas there's a much higher incident than in other areas. So one, I guess the question is, what's the dynamic? Why is it so concentrated like that? And then the follow-up is, are we doing everything we should be doing? Are we doing everything that we can be doing to minimize those levels, those incidents? Because it seems to me that they're still pretty high, certainly in some of those areas.
Yes, there are certainly some geographic clustering of where we see the greatest risk. Has a lot to do with the age of the housing and with the maintenance of the housing. Lead paint is by far our largest risk factor here in Kent County. As you know, that lead paint was prohibited in 1978, so it's largely in areas where the paint has been around for almost 40 years now and it's peeling and causing problems. Are we doing as much as we could or should be doing? We're doing an awful lot. Certainly there are more things that can be done, but they're very much at the policy level and they're very expensive solutions.
Well, what's the principal process? Just controlling it, covering it, eliminating it?
All of the above. It depends on the condition of that paint.
And is there, are there problems with, once lead-based paint is on a house, it typically gets scraped over and repainted and so on. Does it get into the soils too? Is that an issue as well?
Yeah, it certainly can. And there are best practices for exterior paint removal that involve laying a tarp down around the perimeter of the house to capture those paint chips as they're falling. And the soil is, after the paint chips themselves, is one of the greatest risk factors, the soil around these older homes where children get the dirt in their hands and then they do what kids do and they put their hands to their face.
They eat dirt?
Yeah, unfortunately they do far too often, which can also be a lead risk.
Are these programs that are under, I guess I should know that, but are they under your department's auspices, or is this someplace else that happens?
We receive about $90,000 from the state of Michigan to do the testing and to do some of the case management. There are other organizations, such as the Healthy Homes Coalition, that helps with the mitigation.
Okay. You guys coordinate?
So yes, there's a lot of coordination that goes on between us, the Healthy Homes Coalition, the landlords, and some other organizations as well.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move away from specifics to kind of process stuff, which I traditionally do. And Adam, I appreciate the work of the department. I've typically felt like the health department does one of the better jobs in our county of focusing on outcomes and the so what and what difference are we seeing out there in the community. For some reason, it just jumped out at me today. The strategic goals on this first page are all about doing stuff, and as opposed to what's changing out there in the community. And just doing stuff doesn't feel very strategic to me, because we could easily be doing a great job at something, but it's really not having the intended effect on the community. So I just kind of throw that out there, that there's a disconnect for me there, and I would love to see those strategic goals be more focused on what are we trying to change out there, what are we trying to see different out there in the community, and how well are we doing that, then gets kind of outlined in the rest of our performance objectives. So I just throw that out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Adam this morning? All right, seeing none. Adam, thank you so much for your update. There's always so much going on at the health department. We really appreciate it. You have a team of very passionate, very dedicated, innovative staff, and it's always exciting to see and hear what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the generosity of the time.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 5 on the agenda, Clerk's Office Register of Deeds Performance Measurements Review. We have with us this morning, of course, Clerk Mary Hollenreich. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Daryl and Tom. I want to point out before I begin that I think each of you received a document that looks like this. And under the strategic goals, the 4th bullet point, there's a major typo. It says that we keep the circuit court record secure and complete in order to support the administrator of justice. I know that sounds like comic book Justice League. It's really the administration of justice. As I go through every year, whether it's 5-minute update or longer, I describe who we are and what we do. The clerk registers department or 4 divisions is very straightforward, unlike how complicated and involved in a myriad of things that the health department is in. We're keeper of records, in effect. We have real estate records so that one can follow legal chains of title. We have court records so that people know exactly how court can and will impact their lives. We have all the what's been deemed the vital records of someone's lives in the birth, death, marriage records. Yes, marriage is considered a vital record, as is divorce records, oddly enough, by the state legislature. And then, of course, we keep all election or a significant portion of election records. And keeping those entities going are, here we have President Jerry Chaya, who is the Chief Deputy County Clerk and the Chief Deputy in the Register of Deeds office. Hillary Arthur is the Chief Deputy in our Court Clerk's office in the courthouse. And I think many of you, because you have to file in our office, are familiar with Sue Steiger, who is downstairs still dealing with the aftermath of the election. We've gone through the canvasser's audit. She now has to go out and audit various precincts in the county. So Sue is busily setting all of that up to comply with the state's deadlines. In our 4 divisions in 2 different buildings, we have 44 employees, and that's down from a total of well over 55. At times we've had a lot of temps working, depending on what the real estate market is doing. And the reason we've been able to bring it down to 44 is all of the efficiencies, all of the electronic efficiencies, basically. As I indicate every year, I don't think that performance measures really give a complete picture of our department. And so I don't concentrate on the documents you've probably received. I'll just relate to you all that business in Vital and the court offices remain steady. It generally does remain steady. There'll be slight upticks. For example, in the court office, the largest number of filings we ever had occurred in 1996, and it has dropped ever since then. We had 14,800 that year. We had about 12,000 filed in 2015. But it only incrementally changes. In elections, 16 will be obviously a big year. We all know that we've just finished the pretty large presidential primary, and then in addition to that, we have the August primary. Some areas will have a May election. That will be very small, but we will have a large August election, then of course the November election. Citizens continue to use our e-services in an increasing manner. That's what's helped keep our staffing down. Hasn't been increased, only goes down. And our court collections remain steady. The court orders between $6 and $10 million a year in court fines, costs, and restitution. But the collection rate stays about the same because the people from whom we're collecting remains basically the same. They simply don't have any money to collect. Our 4 offices get about 1,500 walk-in visitors a week, and we probably have a comparable number of telephone calls a week in each of in the combined offices. With regard to the budget, we're the 2nd largest generator of revenue in the county. Obviously, the treasurer brings in the bulk of our funds, I think 50%, but also the Register of Deeds brings in millions of dollars a year. The revenue we brought in this year was about $7 million. Our expenditures were only $3 million. We were $1.3 million, well, total in our offices. We were $1.6 million over the expected revenue, and we were under in expenditures by about $50,000. Obviously, election costs fluctuate from year to year. 15 will be a lower year than 16. We spend a lot of money to run the major elections in 16, but that's just something we accommodate in our budget every other year. Fiscal is well aware of those changes. Accomplishments, our online adoption of marriage applications has risen to 65%, and what that does is it keeps in effect, people out of the office, which means that the people who come into the office are waited on, taken care of much more expeditiously. Online requests for vital records is about 25%. That helps keep customers in the office down to a little lower than it could be. We produce about 50,000 certified vital records from the Vital Records Office every year. And in the CCW world, we did have a major change on December 1st. The responsibility for issuing the gun licenses switched from the Concealed Weapons Board to, in effect, the MSP. The language has been interpreted to indicate that the county clerk has now responsibility to issue, but I have worked with our corporate counsel, Tom Dempsey, and he and I agree that I have no responsibility to say that someone may have a license. We look at the word from on high from the MSP before we issue a CPL. Before the law changed in '01 from a non-shell issue state to now it is a shell issue state, we had 185 concealed carry licenses. As of today, we have 18,000 in the county of Kent. Not sure all those people should be carrying. If you could see what it takes for them to submit their applications downstairs. With the dissolution of the gun boards, there is now more work and more responsibility on our staff downstairs, but so far we are handling it. But if we have any questions at all, we always turn to corporate counsel's office. In the Register of Deeds, the online request for copies is up to 85%, so that has caused a great reduction in customers going into the Register of Deeds office. Obviously, people still come in and record their deeds or mortgages or what other legal property records they need to record. But to obtain a copy of a deed you have already recorded, you can simply record it, or you can simply obtain it online. I'm often asked about sheriff sales, and the peak was 2008 when we had almost 4,000 sheriff sales. In 2015, we had 680, and that's obviously we've only gone through 2 months this year, but it's now running at about 50 a month. So I'm hoping that it will drop to even lower than 2015. We are seeing a steady drop, which is a very good sign, of course. In elections, in addition to 16 being a large year, I think you may have heard in the last election, in the presidential primary, it wasn't just a matter of some ballot shortages. There were lots of machine problems. The machines are aging, and as a matter of fact, the state of Michigan did send out an RFP, and Sue Steiger has worked on that RFP for a new election system or systems, but the RFP responses were very flawed. And so they went back to the drafting board and sent out another RFP. Those responses have come back, and Sue will be meeting next week with the with the Bureau of Elections to go back over and review the RFPs. Hopefully there'll be a new system in place in 2017. The law requires that we can't put a new system in situ for a presidential election, so there will not be one going in 2016. It'll hopefully go in 2017. There will be much longer lines in November. The legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided to do away with straight party voting. So from a non-philosophical perspective, what that will do is cause mass confusion in the precincts and much longer lines. People will not know that they can't vote straight party and will come in and cause a big slowdown. And with now November having all of the school issues on, there will be a big chance of us going to two-page ballots, which will also cause confusion in the precincts. So get ready for the November crunch. In the clerk of the court office, which is in the courthouse, and I would hope everyone here has has visited that office. That is easily our largest office. We have 23 staff in the circuit court office. They, in effect, work for and with 13 judges, soon to be 14 judges, or in several months, 6 referees, and 50-plus court staff, meaning the staff that work with the judges. Then there are all the other offices that are tangent to the circuit court that my office has to work hand in glove with. Since I am the only member of the executive branch involved in that building, I think it's a very crucial role that our office plays, and you're, in effect, we're walking a tightrope. We must keep the judges happy, but we also need to fulfill our duty and responsibility to the electorate in that there is an executive eyes and ears over in that building. But with Hillary running that office and the fact that I did run it years ago, I think we have a very good working relationship with not only the chief judge and the court administrator, but all of the judges and probate court. So that is going well. We collected and distributed $1.5 million in restitution this year, and that is nowhere near what the court orders. But as I had said before, there is only so much you can get from the community that you are charging the money to. So I think $1.5 million passing through our office is a very good amount. It will never be comparable to the amount that the court actually orders. 50% of it is restitution, and that has been deemed the judge's top priority. They want restitution to go out to the victims rather than the money coming into the county coffers to pay the fines and costs. And what the costs are, in effect, are the not only the administration of justice in that building, but also we have to pay outside attorneys to represent defendants. So there are true costs over there, but their philosophy is they want restitution to go out as much restitution as possible to go out to the victims. With regard to collaboration, we work daily collaborating with the MSP on the gun issues, and we worked for months, and I actually will say years, to get the law the way it is now. There were 3 concealed weapon bills written over time and submitted by the same senator, and they morphed over the years into what we have now, and a lot of that was within close working with the Michigan State Police to get us where we are now. We do help with the jail in their reentry program. When a lot of inmates leave, even though it's just a short-term stay at the jail, they have no more documents. And to get back into society with no documents makes it very, very difficult. They've had their driver's licenses stripped, and they simply, for some reason, don't have documents. So we work with the jail to get them birth certificates, so they often walk out of the jail with their birth certificates in hand, which then allows them to move forward, get their driver's licenses or state IDs, or have some sort of identification to start rebuilding their lives. We're trying to break down roadblocks rather than putting some up. We go to a couple of kindergarten events or pre-kindergarten events every year to try to alert the parents that they need birth certificates for their children so that they don't come into our office the first couple of weeks of September and yell that we're keeping their children from school since they can't obtain them. So we've tried to get the word out to the school systems, to get the word out to the prospective students. We send out death lists to the various courts in the area so that they then take certain criminals or people who are on probation, they come off their monitoring list. So that's proved to be very efficient, as opposed to in the old days, people would stay on the list for years because no one had ever notified the various entities that they had died. In Kent County, unlike most of the counties in Michigan, I hold 2 elective positions, county clerk and the register of deeds. The county clerk in the various counties have a myriad of duties. In most counties, they handle jury. Here, I do not handle jury. So it is not very easy to compare county clerks to county clerks across the state. But what is easy is the Register of Deeds. They do almost exactly the same thing. So that is a valid apples to apples comparison. And in 2015, I compared Kent to Macomb, Ottawa, and Washtenaw, and simply took in the number of documents each of the offices recorded, divided that by the number of employees they have working in the office to come up with the number of documents processed per employee for the year. And the nearest county was only 68% as efficient as Kent County. So I think that's a pretty staggering difference. And I do think that Jerry runs, I will say, the most efficient Register of Deeds office in the state. The way we have become so efficient is because of our e-services, I believe, and our, within the office, the electronics in the office, and the use of the web page that WebTex. We have worked very closely with WebTex to put more things out available for the citizens so that they don't have to come down to Kent County or in the middle of Kent County, Grand Rapids to do some of their work. I think you probably all have heard even from your constituents how frightening or how seldom people even come into the city of Grand Rapids. So if we can allow people not to have to spend time to come on down here, then we're all about that. I know that the county's 6 goals should be, in effect, aligned with each of the department's goals, and we have done our best to do that. The number 1 goal of Kent County is stable revenues, and what we have done in our divisions is to try to accurately estimate our revenues and expenses so that the budgeting process can be much more efficient, and that has proven to work out for us. Efficient use of the resources. I know how I don't want to say how tight our commissioners are because no one's tighter than I am, as my staff knows. So we think that we're doing our bit in not spending taxpayers' dollars when it isn't needed. If it isn't broken, we don't replace it. But if it can improve efficiency and reduce costs in the end, then we will obviously adopt that practice. The 3rd and 4th goals of safe community, we don't have much an impact on, nor citizen participation, but being proactive and innovative government, we do pride ourselves in trying to adopt the services or the tools that will allow us to be more efficient and to help citizens get what they need when they need it. This year, and Jim will be happy about this, finally we have put online, like this week, the campaign finance. That took quite a bit of time due to staff shortage, actually. So hopefully within a week or so, one can go online and look up campaign finance. You can't file online, but the citizens can now will be able to look up people's reports. In 2016, we hope to go online with our business registration, and the biggest e-project will be the court's e-filing system. They're not moving into a total e-filing system this year. However, there is the e-business court that is run by Judge Yates, and that will be slowly expanded. Of course, the state is mandating that, and Hillary is working very closely with Andy Thalheimer and the court administrator's office on moving that forward. The 6th county goal, the high quality of life, we think that by allowing citizens to choose the way they obtain their records, whether it's in person, whether it's via the mail, whether it's online, is helping them in managing their lives, and so we're trying to make it as convenient as possible for them. And we think that everything is running pretty smoothly in those 4 offices, and we invite any questions.
Thank you, Mary. Questions for Mary this morning? Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mary. If you look at the report on the courts, it's indicated that the number of documents filed is significantly going down over the last couple of years, 355,000 down to about projected 280,000. You see where I'm looking at?
Is that page 5?
I wrote right over the page number.
Well, as I had indicated, and it's maybe connected, is our top year was 1996, and we had 2,700 more cases filed in '96 than we had last year.
So this is, we have certainly a reduction in the number of cases, which would account for this. I guess I'm wondering, this includes both the e-filing and the paper filing?
Oh, absolutely.
What's the percent? You know what percentage of the total is e-filing, and I assume that's continuing to grow?
That would be very small because that is in such a small specialized
business
business
docket.
that is minuscule almost. 8%, according to Hillary, that's minuscule. And you can't e-file a complaint. Is that correct? You can't e-file the complaint, you can only e-file the following pleadings.
And most of the filings are the following pleadings, but...
Correct, yes.
We're moving towards e-filing and beyond just the business docket.
The complaint will not be e-filed even when we move forward, right, Hillary?
Correct, not for the foreseeable future.
But we'll be moving into the domestic filings will be e-filed.
But not the complaint.
Right, but the other filings. So where do we think we're going to land?
Domestic will be a little bit later. I think we'll expand the civil first. The problem with domestic filings is that that's so much is improper. Over 35% is probably improper in the domestic filings. So what I believe the court will do first is expand the civil ability to e-file.
Does that have a corresponding reduction in your cost of operation? Obviously, it's more efficient to do it.
We don't know. There aren't enough courts up yet to discern, and we don't know how the judges and the staff are going to react. We don't really have a grasp yet. The court, or the state, we know, increased the filing fee recently. As of March 1, the filing fee increased by $25 on all lawsuits in order to put into a fund to start funding the e-filing. The expense of going to an e-filing system is so large that it's going to take a very long time to see any efficiencies or to see any monetary savings due to any staff efficiencies or whatever. And I'm not sure that if you're asking if we can reduce staff in the court office anytime soon, we have struggled and held off on expanding staff. I'm not expanding staff due to the new judge because I believe that with some of the increasing e-filings, which will be very gradual, that's the way I'm going to accommodate right now the burden of work that's on my staff in the court office. I've been holding off because I see the e-filing in the future. So I'm just hoping that the e-filing will help settle down or reduce the workload that's already on that extremely busy office.
Well, certainly my experience is that from an efficiency service point of view, and it's obviously where we're going to go as a society, will be all e-filing. But from a cost perspective, is it projected to ultimately be kind of a trade-off equal because the cost of the technology and maintaining the technology is sort of equal what we're looking at with the staffing as a paper filing system?
Right, that would be the hope. Our court office has 5 file room staff, 4 of whom work full-time, actually filing the paperwork. So going forward, either that will be reduced or those people's job duties will be changed. So they may be doing more scanning in of documents for pro-per filers, for example. But we're hoping and planning to have it be cost neutral. At the least.
You need a rule that tells those lawyers they can only file 3 things.
Any other questions? Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question and then maybe a little bit longer comment. First one was just you had indicated that the CCW permits went from 185 to over 18,000
Since 2001.
That's the question I was going to ask.
It's when we became a shell issue state.
Right.
July 1 of 2001.
Thanks. I wasn't sure how long ago that was. A little bit longer comment, if I could. First of all, Mary, I really appreciate some of the specific things that you've done in your work in the clerk's office, and a couple things that come to mind are the birth certificate piece that you mentioned for people coming out of incarceration, which is really a significant piece that a lot of us don't recognize as a barrier to getting people back into society in a productive way, in a healthy way. The other thing that I will never forget is your sensitivity to, there was a time some time ago when the fees for accessing certain documents, and I don't even remember exactly what those were, that structure was being changed, and it was going to have a significant effect on legal aid, an organization that really couldn't afford.
That was documents for the court office.
Right, couldn't afford another hit to their budget, and you were able to find a way to mitigate that somewhat for them, and I think that's significant for the most vulnerable people in our community. So I appreciate those efforts. I'm also fascinated by your comment that it's difficult to kind of provide the information, the performance measures that we suggest are helpful. And one of the things that kept coming into my mind as you were reporting was the question of how would we know in the elections area, how would this community know that we had a successful election? That's a question that to me seems like an important one to ask. And if we start with that question, then we start asking questions like, so what would be the indicators that we had a successful election? What would that look like? Would it be how long people waited in line? Would it be how long it took to get information from the polling place onto the online, onto the system so that the public could see it? A lot of those different things that seems to me are outcomes that we could measure to figure out whether an election really was a good one. And
I'll give you a response that the prosecutor often gives when he's giving his PMs, that he can't control what comes to him. He can't control the number of robberies, he can't control the number of murders, which impacts his success rate or his failure rate because there's no way of predicting. There's much in an election we don't control. Michigan's the most decentralized state in the nation. So whether it's wait time in a precinct, I have absolutely no control over that. So if you're looking at it from a larger than County of Kent issue and just how did Kent County do, that would be reports we would have to get from our 35 local clerks and for them to ascertain that from, we have no control over, which is regrettable. In most states, the county clerk runs the precincts. We don't here, so we have absolutely no control over that. We train 40% of the workers in Kent County, but we don't control them. So I'm not sure I could ever use that, or this department could ever use that as an indicator. We'd also have to define successful election, and on primary night, or on the presidential primary night, we had set up a modeming system. I know that sounds a little archaic, for the results from many communities to be modemed in, and every single one of them failed because of some cable switch that we weren't told about, because IT was there checking the numbers were all correct, and just something had happened the day before, not one of them weren't. So I almost wouldn't want to be held responsible for some of that is totally out of our control. Now, whether we believe, and I would use the word believe with a very strong knowledge, that there's no hacking and no fraud, yes, I think we can probably come up with something like that. it's very difficult to explain to the citizenry that with this system, it's well nigh impossible to hack. There's no internet, there's no way to hack into these little chips that go into the computers or into the machines to tabulate, and there are rigorous testing that we do, so maybe some of that could be morphed into a PM, but things that are out of my control, I wouldn't want the department to be held accountable for, even though it's a legitimate request in trying to understand the entire election process.
Any other questions for Mary this morning? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Mary, for all your hard work and your great report this morning. We appreciate it. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have some action requests. Number 6, Board of Commissioners, adoption of the Agribusiness Community Work Group report.
This is a request to recommend to the board to adopt the final report of the Agribusiness Community Work Group. On May 8th, 2014, then Board Chair Dan Korndike created the Agribusiness Community Work Group with representation from local units of government, the private sector, and community groups to identify, evaluate, and recommend opportunities to support, expand, and attract agribusiness while being mindful of the limited resources of local governments. The 14-member work group met regularly between June of 2014 and May of 2015, and again in October and November of 2015 to develop a comprehensive report. The report underscored the importance of agribusiness locally and statewide and concluded that while much is already being done by a variety of organizations and stakeholders within the county and the region to support agriculture, additional focus or emphasis in a few key areas would be beneficial. The ACWG approved the report on November 16, 2015. The report was received by the Board of Commissioners on November 19, 2015, and presented at a board work session on February 11, 2016. Board Chair Jim Salfeld has referred the report to the Legislative and Human Resources Committee for consideration of a recommendation for adoption by the board. Adoption of the report by the board will give substantive effect to the findings within the report, allowing it to be used by the county and other organizations and stakeholders as support for grant applications and other activities in support of agribusiness in the region.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Korndike, is there support? Support by Commissioner Mast. Comments or questions on the motion? Commissioner Mast?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think so. Thank you very much, Mary, and I guess I see Chair Salfeld has left her, so there's lots of members who were part of that group. I am impressed by the depth of data and depth of recommendation, depth of stuff that's in here. I mean, I've read it over a couple different times. It is really good to have all of this background. And I was struck by Mr. Chapla's comments that, and I'm sure we'll adopt it. There's no question that why we wouldn't adopt it. But his question now, this action will signal to the business community and to the agricultural community our support, and I think it does. But I guess my question is, as I read through this, on page 3, the executive summary shows the recommendations. That's always something you look for when you do the amount of work that you do. I read and reread and looked at those recommendations, and then it talks about a general theme. And I don't see, probably I'm missing things, but I don't see how those recommendations signal strong support of agricultural and economic development and et cetera, because it just makes a key word. It has 3 sentences in there. On the recommendations is what's labeled, but it offers the following general observations. It doesn't really even, those don't even turn into be strong recommendations. So I'm wondering, I guess, if someone can answer, Mary, probably you can, where does this go? I mean, we're accepting it now. What's going to happen?
Okay. Mary Swanson.
Good morning, Commissioners. That was a topic of discussion among the work group. They wanted to know what's going to happen to this. There's a lot of information here. So things that they requested be done is that it be transmitted on our website, be put forward electronically. I know we are going to be working with Lisa LaPlante following the board's action on this to make sure that it gets shared with all the local municipalities. Many of the organizations that have the ability to impact some of these issues, Right Place, MSU Extension, the Workforce Development Board, were part of the work group discussions, and so some of that has already taken place that they're waiting to carry this forward. So there's some specific ways it'll be carried out, again, through posting of it, through meetings. It'll be discussed in RPI's presentations about agribusiness, but also through the local connections that already exist that are working on this issue. We're going to make sure that they have it in front of them and that there's an opportunity to be mindful of the recommendations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Talley?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo Harold's comments about the thoroughness and the scope of the report. I think it's amazing the amount of work that went into it. And obviously, it took a couple of years to do all that. And I've had some conversations with Chair Salfeld, and I think I agree with him that the actual process, the work of doing this report, has an effect on the outcome. Bringing people together, getting the issues out there, getting people at that table talking together. So I appreciate that part of the work. I continue to have a serious concern about the process of handling reports, and I want to talk about that just for a minute. And I've expressed some of that already in my response to Council's opinion about the process. And I'd just like to call attention to this diagram, which I hope everybody takes a look at. And I think probably if you take a look at that diagram, it really suggests that we should not be adopting an entire report. And I think I can say with some credibility, because I was on the committee that came up with this process initially in 2011, and then again on the committee that revised it in 2015, that the intent has always been that we try to avoid adopting reports, because there can be a number of different things in that report that individual members might have concerns with that might make them not want to vote in favor of adopting the entire report. So the focus of this was to encourage committees, ad hoc committees, to focus on specific recommendations, actionable recommendations, that then the chair or the establishing chair could then send to either LHR or Finance Physical Resources for consideration and action, and with potential to go to the full board. So when you look at that diagram, the chair ensures that the report fulfills the mandate and has specific recommendations, puts it on the agenda for discussion, which we've done, but then after discussion, everything either goes back to no further action or refers specific recommendations to the appropriate committee for review and recommendation. So I again want to express my concern about the process and then to say that when I look at the recommendations in here, a number of them don't feel particularly actionable to me. And I think that's a little bit perhaps what Commissioner Mass was expressing. So my concern then, the bottom line here is actually that I think that adopting a report like this has a greater likelihood of this report sitting on the shelf by adopting it as a whole than if it had very actionable specific recommendations that then we would process and give a lot more weight to. So I hope that's not the case, but in terms of process, I think that adopting a report like this with some recommendations that you know, a lot of them say, well, we should work better together and we should collaborate, and, well, what's ever going to happen with that is my concern. So those express that, looking forward to continuing to have these kinds of reports and thinking about how we want to process them. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair. Also, as I read through this, clearly a substantial amount of work and a persuasive case is made, I think, through the analysis and through the hard work that we need to be actively involved in supporting agribusiness in the county. So I think it's very well done in that regard. I do, though, share some of the same concerns that have been expressed about adopting a report as opposed to focusing on the recommendations. And I think that for some of the same reasons that were just expressed by Commissioner Talon, that the process works best if we allow it to engage in a free analysis and an open, argumentative, persuasive document in the report, but bringing it down to a specific set of recommendations that we then review and approve or don't approve. So I'm more comfortable with that process, and I think that that's right. That's what was intended when we talked about setting this structure up for dealing with reports. When it gets to the recommendations, I think the recommendations are fine. I can support the recommendations. However, I think they need to ultimately result in something more concrete, specific, and I think that's really contemplated anyway. So I'm not resisting adopting the recommendations. They're simply encouraging that these recommendations in and of themselves don't have metrics in them. They don't have much specifics to them. But they certainly affirm that there needs to be ultimate follow-up. There needs to be some identification of specific activities. And assuming that we approve this, I look forward to seeing those specifics coming back to us saying, because we've agreed that we want to ensure this activity or support that activity, that means we need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And here's how we ought to be doing it. Here's what it's going to cost us to do it. And here's the proposed results from that. So accepting that it's going to result in something more concrete, I support the recommendations.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Korndike?
Thank you. So maybe, the discussion isn't with the report. Obviously, great work and great recommendations. This discussion seems to be about the process. So maybe we could get Tom to give us his interpretation of how the standing rules might have changed between 2011 and 15, and why we need to move forward with adopting this versus just the file that we have typically done in the past.
Again, I think that there are good comments here from each of the commissioners in terms of rationale for why you may want to adopt or not adopt an entire report versus specific recommendations. When I was asked about this matter in terms of looking at the standing rules, the fact is that the process was set up so that if the chair received a report and it met the charge, it was put on the agenda without any further motion. And it was just turned around and received by this board. And that did not give any substantive effect to the substance of the report. And sometimes that's enough. Other times, again, the standing rules allow for further discussion and for referral of information in those reports for further action. In this instance, again, we have both of those things occur, where this matter was a subject of a work session, and a presentation was provided to the entire board to, again, highlight the work that was done by the group. And further, because I think we have probably less substantive or direct recommendations for actions by this board, you had a recommendation or a referral from the chair to basically adopt the report as a whole because of the to give some substantive effect to the thought behind what that report was trying to do, and that was to basically work collaboratively with all of the organizations in the area and highlighting the importance of agribusiness. I don't have the history that some have had on this board in terms of where that may have been a problem. What we saw between the change between the previous standing rules and this standing rules version are basically that in 2013, the standing rules provided that referral came from the body, and it came from this board for a referral to the standing committees and following through a process. What we had with the change here was that referral came from the chair rather than from the board. And it mentions basically that they can refer specific recommendations, but it does not specify that, again, those specific recommendations have to be recommendations from the report. In this case, your chair is asking for a specific recommendation to recommend the adoption of the report in its entirety. And that may have some issues for some people, but again, it may be something that bears further scrutiny in the future.
Thank you, Tom. Commissioner Bolger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see anything objectionable in this report. So, I mean, I note your process. I think this was a similar process with the One Kent report, if I'm right. So I didn't sit on this board. You know, we did. I think many of us were not involved in all the work that went into this. These are the actions and the specifics that they chose to present to us. I think that we should move the report, as I don't see that there's a problem with anything in it. Maybe moving forward, we require more specific actionable items with future discussions, or we could continue to provide more information or look deeper into this issue and see if there's other things we could do to support agribusiness. But I think we should move this report, and I move that we do so.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Vaughn?
Yes, from a business standpoint, and from what the report shows, there's probably 200 or 300 farms that do 90% of the business. Maybe it's a different number than that. Maybe there's another 100 farms that contribute in some important way. But I think we should have a real concern for those mega farms, those big farms, what we need to do to help and support those. Those are the people that are buying the John Deere equipment and so forth, and really adding to our agribusiness here in Kent County. Now, I know those other farms may in total support one of these mega farms where they have cattle and so forth, and bring feed and grain in, but I'm sure some of those fall into more of the hobby farms where they're working at some other business, and at night and weekends they work their farms. So I think back in the old days when I was on the road, those big accounts were the bread and butter ones, and oh, by the way, we need to check on these as well. So I really think we need to know what these big boys are doing and how we can help and support them.
Thank you. Commissioner Antor?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to point out, I think recently we've had at least 2 different real estate websites, national websites, that have indicated that the greater Grand Rapids area is the fastest growing real estate market in the country right now. We're booming. If you get down to Byron Center and other areas, you see all the growth, and it's just really important to keep in mind that generally when you're building something, you have to put it a lot of times on farmland for the bigger developments, and that's fine. That's the market speaking. But whenever you start to develop good agricultural land, prime land, it is going to have an effect on our economic engine, which is, it's a huge, kind of a sleeping giant. Ag right now is huge for a lot of different reasons, one of which is we no longer can grow enough food to feed the world. The days of the surpluses, in a lot of cases, are over. We don't have the capability anymore to feed the growing population. So agriculture is going to continue to ramp up. And I just want to make sure that we're aware of the fact that we need to have a plan in place where we look to develop and work with communities around this area, that we look at areas that aren't necessarily prime ag that we're covering up. You only have to look over to Detroit. They buried some of the best ag land, in the state of Michigan, without a real plan in place, and now they want to knock buildings down and houses to go revert back to agriculture. in a lot of cases. The same thing is within Flint, and you just can't do that financially. That model does not work. So moving forward, I just want to, I'm going to vote yes for this report, but with the sense that we do need to, keep our eye on the ball and kind of go back and revisit this to make sure that we have a plan as we move forward to address some of these issues, because we're going to keep growing and put asphalt down. We got to understand the ramifications of burying some of this land. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I will reiterate several of the comments here today. I feel that this is a very thorough report. Appreciate Commissioner Korndike for putting this commission together, and Jim Southfeld's work as well moving forward with this. They met for over a year to put all of these recommendations together. I think somebody mentioned something about this, being afraid this is going to sit on the shelf somewhere and get dusty and be forgotten about. I think the fact that we have several members from that work group committee here today who obviously are very passionate about these issues is a testament that that is not going to be the case. The process, I think, is a good one. I think that moving forward with our reports, it makes sense to adopt the report and then move forward on those recommendations. And I know we have a committed group of people from the community who are here and ready to do that with the leadership that we have on the board as well. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and call this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And also, I don't want to forget to thank all of the staff, Mary Swanson, who's trying to creep back to her seat real quick. But thank you for all your work as well on this agribusiness report.
Thank you, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Nathan Kark, the management analyst in our office, who started just a year ago, this was one of his first projects, and I think you can all see the benefit of having that position and his work on this, so I want to publicly acknowledge that as well. You saw me, but Nathan did a lot of the work behind the scenes.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan, as well. Item number 7 on the agenda, front of the court sheriff, amend the front of the court budget to reflect new state Medicaid reimbursement payments to add 2 new deputies.
This is a request to recommend to the board to appropriate $161,551 in medical support incentive payments and $124,353 in additional Title 4D cooperative reimbursement revenues to the 2016 front of the court budget, and to add 2 road patrol deputy positions to the Sheriff Department to provide enforcement services for the front of the court. In August of 2015, the State Court Administrator's Office notified the front of the court that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services would begin providing incentive payments to counties for medical support reimbursement. The front of the court estimates that its incentive earnings will average $150,000 annually, but has been informed by the state that fiscal year 2016 payments will total approximately $313,200, which includes incentive payments earned for previous years. The front of the court is requesting, and the sheriff supports, using a portion of these funds to add 2 Sheriff Road Patrol deputy positions to be assigned to the front of the court to focus entirely on warrant enforcement activities on the more than 4,000 warrants issued annually. The annual cost for wages and benefits for the 2 deputies is $244,000. Additional one-time costs of $163,821 will be incurred in fiscal year 2016 to purchase vehicles, uniforms, and equipment. Due to the timing, total costs for the fiscal year 2016 are estimated to be $285,904. Any revenues received in excess of this amount will be used to reduce the general fund transfer to the front of the court budget. Since 2/3 of the cost of the personnel and the non-recurring items are also eligible to be reimbursed by the federal government under the FOC's Title 4D Cooperative Reimbursement Program grant, the front of the court will request an amendment to the grant to include these additional expenses. The additional revenues from the incentive payments and Title 4D funding are expected to cover all costs associated with the deputies in future years. In the event that funding is eliminated or decreased, the positions will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the county's fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Korndike. Do we have a support?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Andor. Questions or comments on the motion? Yes, Commissioner Stack.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support the motion, though I will say I have some reservation about the future predictability and reliability of the funding mechanisms. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned in the world of Medicaid is that it's not a very reliable world. And this new concept of these incentive payments, while a great idea perhaps, how long will they live? And if they're not going to survive, what's Plan B?
And that's why we always have a provision in these that states that if funding is reduced or eliminated, then we have to reevaluate this, and if the board and the FOC and the Sheriff's Department believe that this is a program that's worth continued funding through the county's resources, that would be the opportunity. So,
What about the secondary source, the Title 4D grant funding?
I'm going to lateral that one over to probably either Dan or Wendy or Mary.
Anybody?
What was the question? Someone?
Nice lateral.
We're all looking at each other, but that has been a funding formula that has been in existence since I've been with the county, and it has traditionally paid 2/3 of the costs, and it's been pretty static. It has not changed. So as Darrell mentioned, we always put our caveat language in here that we can reevaluate it, but that funding source has been stable for many, many, many years.
Capable of potentially making up some deficiencies if these incentive payments dwindle?
Again, they would, if the incentive payments go away, you still have the 2/3, and we would have to evaluate where we come up with the 1/3, or discontinue the positions.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is Commissioner Miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous for the good of the group this morning? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. Our next meeting is April 12th at 8:30. Thank you.
I am Kent County. I am Kent County.
I am Kent County.
We are 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 Kent County. We are Kent County.
Bayard, Kent County. Ami, Kent County.
Somos, Kent County.
Mas Ira, Kent County. We are Kent County. We are Kent County.
We are Kent County. Oh yeah.